Hello, hello. Thank you everybody for being here today. Today we're lucky enough to get to speak with Ashley Capes, author of The Fairy Wren. And honestly, I don't know where to begin with this one because I felt so sucked in from the beginning and it had such, I want to say innocent beginnings. Opens up in a quiet town, you have a little bookseller. Like it sets up such a cozy vibe, and then obviously the story just careens off of that down a cliff, which is also just incredibly fun. I found it really easy to read. I tore through it in an afternoon, and I think you just did an incredible job with the foreshadowing and then also just the build up because it felt like every page you were so locked in. I didn't want to put it down because it felt like, okay, well, three more pages, something else is going to be shown to us. And
Yeah,
I thought that the pacing was really, really well done. So hats off to you there.
thank you. Yeah, I know what you mean about that sort of deceptive opening. I'm glad that happened, I guess. Yeah. Um,
The opening. So after I read the opening chapter, I made a little. I keep notes while I'm reading these things, and I wrote, if this turns out to be Breaking Bookshop, like Breaking Bad, like where the guy starts off really innocent and then it turns, I'm going to be so happy. I wasn't expecting it to take that
yeah.
path so literally, but like after, I really wish we could wait till the end for spoilers, but I'm just going to give the spoiler warning just now.
Okay.
The rate at which it becomes just about a normal guy committing crimes is phenomenal. I loved that about it.
Mhm.
But I was invested in why he was doing it from the outset because immediately there's this question of, is X getting back in touch with him?
Yeah.
She showed up at his house before and everything. So as I was reading the intro, when I saw it start to turn, my first thought was, I wonder if it was always set in the bookshop or if that was something that came later. So tell me a little bit about the genesis of it all, where it came from, how it started, what it evolved into.
It did kick off at the bookshop, absolutely. It had because I'm on that scale of, you know, plotter versus pantser, that discovery side of things, I skew much closer to discovery. So I had the opening, I had the trouble in terms of, him facing eviction from the landlord and his stress of the failing business. I had all that in place, and I had this sort of random phone call from his ex as that opening. And from there, I just um, essentially explored, I guess, and
Yeah.
see sort of, I thought to myself, okay, let's see how far I can push poor Paul. Let's see how many stupid things I can get him to do. Um, and that, yeah, it did really snowball. And I don't know if it's, probably most people who do the discovery style of writing have a lot of work to do later when it comes to editing and pruning and cutting off subplots and trying to then narrow the focus. So yeah, it became a little more, yeah, breaking bookshop different
It
as it
went
went on.
places. It went places. It certainly didn't go places I expected it to go. That's one of the reasons I loved it so much, though,
Okay, good.
was at the outset, I would maybe have predicted. Like, I remember I messaged Ryan, so I read the first chapters of a lot of books, obviously, and
Yeah.
I'll usually get in touch with Ryan about them when I've read maybe two, three chapters and I'm really enjoying it or something. I read this one. I went, man, this is pretty good. I really love the opening. It's a little bit black books. The bookshop's
Oh
in
yeah, yeah.
disrepair. It's all apart. I love the vibe it's going for, but there's a hook that really has me, and it's the phone call. The phone call
Yeah.
changes everything.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Before I get into the rest of it, where did the shop with the phone call specifically come from? Where did that come from?
I remember someone, it might have been a film class at university, talking about the opening to, this will test my memory, talking about the opening to maybe How the West Was Won. I hope this is true. This is
Yeah,
going to be a terrible story if I'm wrong, but um, they were talking about how there's an unanswered phone call and it just keeps ringing and ringing and ringing so long at the opening of the film, if it's that film. And that idea as a narrative hook is in like this phone call must be answered, or why is it not being answered? What is sort of
Yeah.
happening? Why won't someone pick up this phone? I thought I'd give the reader a little more and actually, have a phone call, and have something unanswered. In this case, it's going to be, what does she want, or is it her at all? Um, yeah, sort of that unanswered phone call or unanswered question, because one of my favorite things about writing tends to be, I guess, the delivery of and resolution of unanswered questions. At what pace do I
Yeah.
give the reader an answer? At what pace do I give them another question to keep them going? Um, and that sort of tension between, yeah, what is answered and what is not answered and when
Yeah.
keeps things going. So I thought, yep, I need an unanswered question quite early.
Hmm.
Um, and some hint of menace early, because especially with my quite beautiful front cover, I think some people do go into the
Yeah.
book
Yeah,
thinking
yeah.
that it's going to
Yeah.
be this style of story. And if I don't get some sort of hint of menace or something unanswered or something unsettling in early, I'm going to get confused and disappointed readers.
Well, I feel like on the flip
I've
side,
got.
like, well, yeah, I completely agree. The cover lulls you into a false sense of security is what I've quickly
Yeah.
learned about the fairy run.
Yeah.
And like I want to
Such a
get into
nice
the
title as
oh, it
well.
is. I
The
want to get
Yeah.
into the
friend.
innocence of the bird itself as well, but I think the part of things with the phone call is that it is relatable, and I think it makes it relatable to the reader. Like, you're only ever one phone call away from everything being so different.
Yeah.
Um, and especially
Mm.
with the way society is and everything like that, like, yeah, you
Yeah.
never know when you can get an unexpected phone call, and it probably happens more frequently than you think. And for
Yeah.
everything to careen from
Oh
there,
yeah.
I think that
Mm.
that's part of what sucked us in.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, good. It's really nice to hear that, I've succeeded at things I tried. Um,
Yeah.
because it's sort of, particularly with a book like The Fairy Wren that mashes up fair few genres and has like I've thrown the whole kitchen sink at the book in some ways. It's nice to know that some of these big swings work, and some of these purposeful things work. Which isn't to say that every step of the book is me being purposeful. Um, as I
Hmm.
said, some things I discovered along the way with,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, definitely.
Uh, this is a question.
There's a game. Oh, Ryan, if you'll excuse me, there's a
No, go
game I
on.
like to play called Was It Deliberate? So this is a thing that so it's something that comes up with authors all the time is how purposeful was it? Like how much of the swings were deliberate, the things that hit, the
Yeah.
things that landed. Did you mean it to land the way that it did? I made loads of notes about that on the way through because there was
Okay.
several moments I was like, that was pretty good. I wonder if he meant it.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
remember
Well,
texting Ryan at the time, yeah, through it, being like,
what's
man, I wonder what he was thinking with this.
what was one of those?
So, man, I'm glad we get to talk about Brian the Birdman.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I loved Brian the Birdman. That
Yeah.
was the point at which the story elevated a level for me. Like until then,
Okay.
it was a good mystery. I was enjoying the mystery, and
Yeah.
I was really invested. I was really hooked in. I loved the characters. I wanted to see the bookshop succeed. There's so much going on. When he meets Brian the Birdman, I was like, "There's something else." It took a little bit of a
Yeah.
Twin Peaks twist, and I was like,
Yeah.
what's going on? I was like, this is great. It added a layer of subtext and I guess meta narrative and a questioning of the reliability of the
Yeah.
narrator and stuff that what led to Brian the Birdman and how deliberate. What were you going for with it? What happened? Tell me everything.
I I did think to myself, if I want to escalate this sense of unanswered questions and what is unsettling about the
Mm.
story, I need to escalate, and I need to put Paul into a position where he is forced to do a little bit of self-reflection as well. Like, Paul's
Yeah.
done all these things that aren't great things necessarily, and not even necessarily all of them. Not a lot of things he does at all are malicious, but he's still doing bad things. And I
He's not
wanted
he's
him
not
in a
helping himself.
No, no. I wanted him in a spot where he'd have it like where he'd have a moment where he thought, you know what, I'm just getting deeper and deeper into doing unpleasant things,
Mhm.
and he's sort of
Breaking bookshop.
yeah, he's really witnessing moments that are like not for him, and
Mhm.
the idea that it would be another crime seemed superfluous. So I wanted it
Mhm.
something unusual that may or may not have been linked to the bird itself, and force the reader into thinking, yeah, what sort of links there are, and also something that did seem a little surreal because if I had if I had only a really, really stark division between magical stuff with the Wren and
Mhm.
the Paul making bad choices stuff with the sort of
Yeah.
dramatic real world stuff, if they were really, really separate, maybe it'd be too disjointed. And so I needed some things happening in the real world that were also odd beyond the phone call. And when I came up with that scene and chatted to my editor about it, we nearly cut it. We nearly thought this is too
Mhm.
far. This is, it's not a disturbing scene, even though it's not
Yeah.
pleasant, but it's not, is it too far for this story? Does it fit?
Mhm.
And we went back and forth about it for a while, but in the end, I wanted that extra touch of surrealism and which doesn't,
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't defeat my editor. We agreed, but I
Right.
wanted it in
Right.
there
Yeah.
um more than my doubts about the scene. I wanted it in there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I've got. I think you made the right call, man. I think without
Okay.
that element of the weird and wonderful coming into
Yeah.
the world, because like if you read the notes that I made when I was reading it through, literally I've written the words Brian the Birdman really elevates this
Okay,
Lamau,
good.
and then the next sentence is this? I've just written psychosis in capital letters, like
Okay.
question mark.
Yeah.
Is he
Yeah.
losing his mind under the pressure? Is he
Yeah.
breaking? Is he cracking? Is he
Yeah.
reliable? Can I trust what he's telling me? And then below
Cool.
that, oh, the face on the tree is rough.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because the on the tree was another moment that had me like, oh my god, like
Yeah. Yeah.
God, this guy's going through it, man. And it was one of those like, are we descending into the kind of circles of hell here? Is it just going to get worse and worse and worse for him?
Yeah.
Where does it end? Which is a narrative question that I think gets answered when
Yeah.
I'm just checking how much time we've got left before I drop the words telepathic fetus, which we're going
Okay.
to get into.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Jeez.
But like where the story still sorry, Ryan.
You're good.
If you're going to read the story, man, you got to know about this. If you've read the book, you know that's like it started on I need to make money in the bookshop, and it ended on the unborn child is telling me that we're in danger.
Yeah.
The way that I did not even question the journey to get to that point, I
Okay.
think was a
Yeah.
testament to the story.
That's a great
Cool.
point there.
Awesome.
Is
Okay.
that
Good.
like at one point he's at the ocean, like he just starts following the bird, and I noticed myself being like, "Nick, follow the
Yeah,
bird. Obviously, you need to follow." Like I'm
Of course.
completely rooting for
I
him.
wanted to follow the bird. I
Exactly,
was
I'm
like,
completely
find out
rooting
what the
for him
bird
in
is trying
that.
to tell me.
And I just had a small bird question that I could probably very easily Google, but I wanted to know,
Mhm.
this is a real bird that's indigenous to that area. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's like the superb Eastern Fairy Wren, and it's a little more like the feather color balance is actually a little more black compared to the book cover. So I said to
Mm.
the artist, I want a blue wren, and it's like there's a fairy wren in Australia, in this part of Australia that's yeah, that's it looks like this, but can the cover be more blue? So the real thing is it, I don't know, is that um where's my camera? So is that
Oh,
how
cool.
visible is
Oh,
that?
nice.
Wow.
So they look a bit more like that than the cover.
Man,
Okay.
I didn't prepare this earlier. It's always on the bookshelf.
Nice.
that's
Um,
really cool.
I love how
so
birds are named like that. Like it's called a superb fairy
all
wren.
right,
We have a bird out here called a stellar jay. Like
yeah,
I would love we just had compliments in front of our names.
there's
The
elevated,
great tip.
yeah, yeah, um, yeah. So I would see that wren semi often when I was in that part of the state, and yeah, it must have sank in terms of which bird I ought to use in this visually
Mhm.
striking, quite distinctive compared to just any other bird.
Yeah.
And in particular, I thought it had to be a wren or something small um, for the scene where he pulls up in the driveway of the car, because you've got the sense of the scale of the car versus the small vulnerability of the bird. So I thought, well,
Mhm.
it has to be something to some extent delicate. So I went with a wren. Yeah,
Something precious. I
yeah,
remember one of the notes that I made very early on, like I think at the first sighting of the fairy wren, I wrote "birds are messengers" in my notes, and I kept
yeah,
finding that come back up, even though it's never really explicitly said or anything.
yeah,
But the idea that the birds try to tell him something, and I was like, "Brother, man, birds are messengers. Listen to the bird."
yeah,
But because the story takes place in, like, obviously there's the element of surrealism, but because the story takes place in such a real situation, it kind of put I felt myself reading as a terms of like, I wouldn't believe him. Like, if everything around me
yeah,
was falling
Yeah.
down, and then eventually I was like, no, follow the bird, it'll all be fine. Follow the bird.
yeah,
I can imagine that not working out in my favor from a society perspective.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's sort of like that element of risk taking that Paul probably isn't ready to take early on.
Mhm.
Um, because I think of him as being like, yeah, he's defensive, but I think of him as being probably more depressed than
Yeah.
aggressive.
Yeah.
And I think that makes him, that flatness that comes with that, I think it makes him a little more inclined to just roll with stuff. Like he's
Mhm.
not
Yeah.
necessarily, well, we know he's not thinking. Well, he is thinking, but he's not really thinking through as far as consequences. He's sometimes fairly reactive. Um, and yeah, when you were emailing me both and talking about, like the sheer volume of crap I put him through,
Yeah.
it did remind me of, like, I feel bad um doing that. I don't a lot of my other books, when I push the adventure angle, I'm doing more, Indiana Jones style adventure, I guess, even if it's not archaeology, whereby the good guys are going to get over the line. There'll be some
Yeah.
trouble along the way, but it's like it's a bit more upbeat. Whereas back with the Fairy Wren, um, there is a bit of bleakness, I suppose. Yeah, it is a bit.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I
without
call it
being grim, but it's
yeah.
bleak.
And
Yeah.
it wasn't all like, yeah, obviously, like we said, he didn't help himself, but it wasn't all his fault. Like, he did get roped into
No.
things. Like, what was his friend's name? Was it John?
Yeah.
John just dragging him
Oh, John,
down.
man.
Like,
Yeah.
like obviously we said spoilers, but they kill a guy, and
I know.
all this kind of things that they do, and it's like
Yeah.
that could have all been avoided. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
John.
I know. And like you could, I mean, I think too, if I didn't have Paul help out with the destruction of the car,
Mhm.
um, you might not
Mhm.
accept the covering up of the murder later.
Yeah.
But yeah, that escalation thing, like you said, Paul's not necessarily always looking for trouble, but he's too out of it to say no. I won't help you do these bad things. He just rolls along
Well,
with it.
and I think there's also this element
Yeah.
of like, I don't think forgive me, I read this a little ways ago now, but there's a lot of foreshadowing into his father and
Mm,
this and that. So it feels like there were elements of it where you're not gonna step into those shoes. Like, those shoes are always gonna be too big to fill,
yeah.
which I can only imagine plays more to depression and just causes the spiral. Because I think there's times where the lawyer is like, I'm only doing this because of your dad, not because of you.
Yeah. Like he's sort of he's receiving a lot of these sort of you're on thin ice warnings from all kinds of people around him, and he's not taking it. And he's not reflecting on, yeah, how much good luck he has in terms of the people who will help him.
Right.
And he's, even early on it's been a while for me too, but I'm going to guess chapter 2, where he's
Yeah.
like, I don't want to be in this party. I don't want this attention. I don't want this. And he's sort of like, you should be getting the sense that he's close to burning bridges with the people that he is currently close to.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah,
Self-sabotaging.
yeah, it feels like that, or it should. And if it did, I'm glad, because that's what I wanted.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. Yeah,
if I'm reading out from my notes, the third line of my notes says, "This man is not depressed. Sorry, this man's not brave. He's depressed," which I
yeah,
think sums up a lot of the stuff that you were talking about there. Like, he's not robbing houses and stuff and going out at night doing bad stuff because he's seeking a thrill. He can't
no,
feel anything. He's numb. He's numb to
Yeah.
it. A
yeah,
lot of,
He has
and I,
absolutely nothing to lose.
yeah,
Like the girl's
yeah,
gone, like the girl's gone,
which
his
was,
business is
yeah,
gone, everything's kind of gone. Like,
yeah,
and I think this is
oh,
actually
yeah.
fairly it rings similarities with Straight River, which we featured, I want to say
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
last year
True.
or whatnot, when the I remember Chris, the author, he said that he wanted to create a situation where the protagonist thought that the only way out was to kill himself. And it's like, yeah, that's heavy. But
yeah,
there,
you put, yeah,
but there's moments where you just like don't see an out. It's like you're already
yeah.
on thin ice by the police, and then you go and you beat up the richest man in
Why not?
town. Like,
Why not?
yeah.
Yeah.
I know, yeah, like
Nothing to
what does
lose.
it matter now? I've already gone this far.
Mhm.
Things are already bad. Let's just lean into it,
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah, I thought I had to have that for the reader to believe anything that comes towards the end of his actions. If he's done this, he'll do this. If
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
done that, he'll probably do that. And I had to, yeah, build that a bit. But I thought there was a review one year that mentioned he still paid for the pizza, which is a
Yeah.
really which is a really small moment where it's like people, some people have mentioned it and said that was odd, and some people said that was good because it was like, I don't know, just a good piece of character detail. I thought I was going for the idea that once you get, as you're going along a certain pace of trouble,
Mhm.
and the big things cannot be controlled, all you can control is the small things. So I
Yeah.
guess it's like he's gone, well, I've done all these things and all these things are happening, but at least I'll solve this tiny problem because I can. This is a small
Yeah.
thing I can solve.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't know if I had enough of those moments in there because um, some folks find Paul, they can't get on board with him, but they can get on board with watching a train wreck. And so I wonder,
Yeah.
um, had I done enough to give Paul these glimpses of there's a good guy under there?
Well, I mean, he meant really well with the Italian girl that was just
Yeah,
there half the time.
yeah,
Oh
For
my
like,
God, we've not even touched on the missing child.
yeah.
This is the this
Steve,
is the
go.
kind
We
of
got we
book
have
where you
7 minutes.
say
Steve, go
something like
for it.
that.
yeah.
Mate, the missing child. What the?
I think that's that discovery thing where I'm like, okay, so if this girl, if he runs into this
Yeah.
girl and he wants to help her, that does show a particular side of him. But I think that's one of those non-planned things where she does end up having a bigger role. So that was definitely a non-purposeful, yeah,
Yeah. You know what Chekhov's gun is, right?
yeah, 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 yeah. So
Right. So in one of my notes, I wrote Chekhov's missing child.
yeah,
And I was
yeah,
like, this child's gonna come back,
yeah,
rescue someone at some point, do something. Nothing. And I was like, way to faint me to the side, so I'm expecting something.
yeah,
But it turns out to just be a well. What I read it as in retrospect was Paul showing his kind of paternal instinct, like his
Mhm.
willingness to care for a child, his
yeah,
care for people. It's also a kind of link to his humanity as he starts
yeah,
losing through the book and starts becoming more and more numb. He
yeah,
still cares for her, he still looks after her and stuff.
yeah, yeah,
But I think that so I've read a lot of books from a lot of authors who do discovery writing. It becomes a spaghetti mess.
yeah,
One of the reasons that I love this so much was that I could kind of tell it was discovery written. I was
yeah,
like, there was no way this was planned.
Right.
This has been found out as it
yeah,
happened. But it rolls with its own punches so well
yeah,
that I never noticed once that it
cool.
was made up. That
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
making it
yeah,
up as you,
yeah, yeah,
which
Well,
is
it
incredible. Like
felt
as
like there
someone who
was
has to
a
wow, like what a
yes,
talent, what an ability.
it felt
cool.
it felt like there was a plan, and like as obviously
It
this
was
was a
jazz. It felt like jazz.
Yeah,
yeah.
there was
I
some
thought
improv.
the ending tied together really well, just very much not in the way I thought it would. And I
Cool.
think that was the nice thing was like with like 40 pages to go, 50 pages to go, you're tearing through the book and I'm sitting there like, there's a lot of loose ends that need to be tied up here, and I have no idea how he's gonna go about it.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a sequel, so we'll have to see. And they get tied up, but like in a way that was very unexpected. It's kind of similar to Steve to the Interloper trilogy when you finally when that all wraps up at the end, you're like, okay, that was out left field, but it works.
Cool.
It's
Was that?
watching the gymnastic thing. They're doing triple backflips and everything. You're trying to watch them stick the landing. You're like, there's no way this is planned.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was like, yeah, like a saxophone solo. I enjoyed it in the way that I enjoy a good saxophone. I
Yeah.
have no
Okay.
idea where it was going. But God, it got there with style and it stuck the landing so well that I couldn't tell it was made up. I think that was one of the
Awesome.
final notes that I made. But honestly, man, what a book. I really loved it.
Yeah,
I'd
cool.
love to talk for hours more about the ending and what happens at the end and the difference between a happy ending, a sad ending, a bittersweet ending, and a kind of
Yeah.
spiritually wholesome ending. But we have 3.5 minutes left or so, so we need to start wrapping up with the spoiler chat and telling people where they can find you
Okay,
online
yeah.
if they want. If they read if they read the Fairy Wren, I know that we've got the Red Hourglass that we considered before
Oh yeah,
because I've looked at that previously and thought
cool.
the Red Hourglass was pretty good, but just couldn't find a space for it. But where can people? What should people read next? Where can they find you online, etc.?
Actually, one of the things that bothers me about the Fairy Wren is if I were to recommend another book like it, I actually don't have another book like it. I I I don't know how to do that again. Um
Yeah, I
I
feel you, man. Yeah.
I mean, a book like that feels like it takes a lot out of you to write. Like that's a heavy book, and I feel like you got to dig deep to find the right kind of emotions to share there.
yeah, I think you're right. I think there's no I mean and there's no point me sitting down trying purposefully to write something like it again. I just have to keep
That
writing
defeats the
books.
purpose, surely. Yeah.
Yeah, I just have to keep writing books and maybe one day something will be in that ballpark.
Mhm.
I think if you did hop on just, I guess it would be just, ashleycapes.com, like just to my website.
Mhm.
If I ever finish the fiction page, um, there will be a little bit more of like, if you liked this book, read this one next by me.
Mhm.
And I've been able to
Yeah.
do that with like the supernatural small town stories that I write separate from the epic fantasy. But
Mhm.
there is one book called Crossings, which also has the small town feel where supernatural things are happening. And that's supernatural suspense, horror, the grey line between those two. But it has a small town feel. It has a sort of like, what is happening? Like, why is there a giant white kangaroo running around the forest? And is this white giant kangaroo killing people? Or is something else going on? So that one has like a little bit of crossover, but
That
it's
was
not
the
as
best promo for a book I've ever heard. So I'm so here for
Yeah, I
it.
was going to say I'm invested already. I want to know about
Yeah.
the giant kangaroo.
okay. Well, maybe I shouldn't say giant, but like certainly very large.
Bigger than me, like
Yeah. Um, and that one has that sort of, yeah, that it has less surrealism, but it has some of the same things. Small town, supernatural, animals, what is going on, main characters dealing with stuff. So that's the one that I sometimes mention, but it's still not. Yeah, nothing I've written is like the Fairy Wren. I don't know how to do that
no,
again.
no two books are ever gonna be the same. And I think
Yeah,
this one didn't read like it was in a trilogy or whatnot. Like this
yeah,
very much read as a one-off
yeah,
story. So
yeah,
I feel satisfied with the ending of it.
yeah. Cool,
But
good.
obviously it's still nice to, if people, yeah, words. We know how I mean. Um,
Yeah,
I would read a sequel, but it would ruin what's already happened.
I
Just
fair.
feel like
leave
that
it as
too.
beautiful
So
as
Yeah,
is,
on
preserved
that
in
note,
amber.
we
thank
got
you.
20 seconds left. Just want to say thank you again, Ashley. Thanks for being
Thank
here.
you.
We coordinated 3 time zones. We're getting better at this.
That was
But
My
good.
God, yes.
yeah. But
Yeah.
Good morning.
if you made it this far, the story was called The Fairy Wren. If you haven't read it, you messed up. Go read it and enjoy the rest of
It's
your day,
like
guys.
getting
Thanks for
kicked in the
coming.
head repeatedly. Good night,
Awesome.
guys.
Thank you.